There used to be a mall in my hometown called Oak Ridge Plaza. It wasn't fancy, just a dying shopping center with a few outdated stores, a food court that smelled like reheated grease, and an old-fashioned department store at the far end. The department store was different from the rest of the mall. It felt wrong. It was always too cold, even in the middle of summer. The lighting flickered just enough to make you feel like someone had walked past in the corner of your eye. And the worst part? The mannequins. They weren't the modern, sleek ones you see today. These were old. Too old. Their plastic skin was yellowed, their glass eyes uneven. Some had deep cracks running down their faces, almost like they had been trying to break out. And there were too many of them. Not just in display windows or clothing sections. Everywhere. By the escalators, near the changing rooms, lining the shoe aisles. Some weren't even wearing clothes. They just stood there, arms slightly raised, fingers curled like they had been caught mid-movement. The store had rules about them. Strict rules. When I was 12, my mom used to bring me to Oak Ridge after school. She'd leave me in the kids section while she shopped. One day, I wandered too far and ended up alone in the clearance section near the back of the store. That's when I saw it. A faded, yellowing sign nailed to the wall. Rule number 1. Do not touch the mannequins. I thought it was a joke. Why would they care if people touched them? Maybe they just didn't want kids knocking them over. Then I noticed something else. The mannequins in this section weren't on stands. They weren't attached to anything. No rods, no bases, just standing on their own. One had a hand slightly lifted as if it had been reaching for something. And that's when I heard it. A faint clicking sound, like plastic fingers tapping against plastic. I turned and ran. After that, I stayed away from the department store. But over the next few years, something weird happened. Oak Ridge Plaza started shutting down. Store after store closed, except for the department store. No one knew why it was still open. The mall was practically abandoned, but that place, its lights were always on. And the mannequins, there were more of them than ever. Now they were in the food court, the hallways, the restrooms. That's when people started whispering about the second rule. Rule number 2. If you see a mannequin where it shouldn't be, do not acknowledge it. Because if you did, it would move closer. Some people said that if you ever found yourself alone in the mall and turned a corner to see a mannequin facing you, it would follow you home. And if you tried to leave the mall, the doors wouldn't open. The security guards were the last ones working there. One of them, a guy named Mark, had been there for years. He used to joke about the mannequins, saying they gave him the creeps. Then, one night, he took one final patrol before quitting. He never made it out. The next morning, the store was still open, but near the entrance there was a new mannequin. It was wearing a security uniform. A badge was pinned to its chest. The name tag said, Mark. A year later, the mall was demolished, except for the department store. They never tore it down. No one knows why. Maybe the demolition crew refused to touch it. Maybe they couldn't. Today, if you drive past the empty lot, you'll still see it. A lone, abandoned building with blacked-out windows. But sometimes, if the light hits just right, you can see shapes inside, standing, waiting, watching. And if you're really unlucky, one of them might be facing the door.